All right, let's talk about primer. I'm going to be spray painting this. Probably a lot of you might choose that because you think a lot of electric guitars are painted, and that's perfectly fine. I would highly recommend using spray paint over a brush paint. My experience, again, it's not the right way or the only way. My experience is spray paint is superior in what it's going to give you. Recap, what have I done to this before primer? Sanded it. I didn't have to do a whole lot of 100 grit. I did do 100 grit in here. Again, kind of going this way with my hand, holding it in 3 or 2 fingers, kind of going this way, down in here, and along here. Everywhere else I hit with 150, just kind of lightly, and then I did 220. I did just because the way I am, I rounded these over a little bit. All these little pockets and all are going to get covered later, but it only took, 5-10 seconds to do that. Total amount of time sanding this, maybe half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, if that. In other words, you didn't have to kill this with sanding. Again, just trying to get a lot of those big defects out, scratches, things like that. Back in my little nook of the barn, why am I inside about to do this? Because it's raining outside right now. And I'm bored, so I need something to do. Off to my left here, I do have a fan. Fortunate enough that I have a pedestal fan. If you hit a box fan or something like that, I'm going to have it off right now for the sound. But then I have some windows behind the camera here. I have a door over here. Once I'm done recording, I'm going to open those up and I'm going to turn the fan on to help try and get some of the fumes from this off of there. But if we weren't recording, I'd have it on right now. Notice how it's not blowing right on here. That would make life a little difficult, right? To have that blowing while I'm spraying. The other thing you notice is just some scrap wood underneath. That way it's not sitting right on my table. I covered my workbench here. Remember, you can use a tailgating table, picnic table, anything you got, a card table. But I did cover it because I don't want paint going everywhere. I use some brown craft paper, butcher paper. Could certainly use newspaper, anything you got. Or if it's a table you don't care about, maybe you don't cover it. When it comes to primer and paint, I'm a big fan of this product right here, Rust-Oleum 2X. I get really good results out of this. I will tell you, I have bought the dollar can at like a Walmart or your hardware store, whatever. Not worth it. Not worth it. This does get a little expensive, but to me, what this gives you is really worth it. I'm very happy when I use this. All right, when you are actually going to primer this and paint it, you want to jump ahead and get the thing done, right? We're excited about this. We're excited to work on our baby, as I call it. Don't. Take a step back, take a deep breath, relax. When I go to cover this, super light coats, moving it back and forth. If you get puddles, you got to sand them out. We don't want drips. We don't want puddles. The first couple coats of this are probably going to go in pretty darn good because of this being dried out. It's wanting to soak up. Nice and slow, nice and even. Take a couple days to do it, especially depending on the weather. If it's humid and muggy, it's not going to work great. We also don't want super hot. We want it to be able to penetrate and get a nice even coat and dry. So read the can, take my directions for what they are, but read the can. I know reading directions isn't what we like to do, but take note of that. The other thing that I jumped ahead, talk about primer. If you have an air compressor, blow this thing off. If you want to do a tack rag, get the dust off, do that. Other people also tell you about something called raising the grain, where you take a not super damp, not dripping wet rag or paper towel, and you kind of wash it, and it should dry within like a minute. If not, you did it too wet. And then once it's dry, sanding it again with 220, and that has to do with the science of the fibers expanding and dust and things like that. Because I am going primer on this, I'm not going to bother doing that because in between coats of primer, I'm going to be sanding it anyway. That's the whole point of primer, to fill those pores and give me a nice surface that wood is prepped and it's going to get sanded and all anyway. So that's why I'm not going to be doing that raising the grain technique. Totally up to you. Again, take my directions for what they are. This is how I do it. Maybe not the right way, maybe not the only way. Google's out there, and plenty of resources for you, right? Shook this up really good before we started recording. Depending on where you are, you may want to wear a mask. Again, for me, I'm pretty well ventilated here, so I'm not super worried. Again, ideally, a day that's not super sunny, but warm out, certainly not raining like it is for me right now. But overall, humidity is not bad. It doesn't feel bad in here. If it was super humid, I might not be doing this. All right. As I do this again, just going to keep it moving nice and light. But as I do this, I am going to try and get as much of it as I can. In other words, as I'm doing the front here or the top, I am also going to try and come in here and do the edges. All right, and now come this way and do this one. One of the things I also like to notice is if it almost looks wet, you're on the verge of maybe a little too heavy. So right here might be looking a little wet, a little shine off the lights. Be careful. Primer, it isn't super bad if you get some drips, because again, you are going to be sanding this thing. So doing primer is nice kind of practice if you don't have great technique with using a spray paint can. All right, there we have it. All right, so right now I'm going to turn my fan on, turn the video off, all that stuff. Then once this is dry, maybe half an hour, I'm going to flip this over, do the back side. That way everywhere has one coat. You might ask about these pockets. Sure, get them sealed. Remember the job of primer, to seal and prep the wood. We want everywhere sealed. However, be careful. If you go too heavy, parts might not fit in there later. Okay? So be careful not to go heavy, especially in this neck pocket here. We need that neck to fit in there good, which will be down the road. But we don't want to get real heavy with globs of primer and paint and such. Again, I'm a fan of this product. I chose white because the base coat of when I paint this is going to be white. Using a darker primer would have been stupid because I'm painting it white. However, if you were painting it a darker color, using like a gray primer makes sense. Okay, so think about that as well. The Rust-Oleum 2X, big fan of their products. Before we got to this, sanded and all that, and prepped it really good, got the dust off, all that stuff. Make sure you do all that as well. When we come back to this, we'll be talking about sanding in between coats, getting it ready for the spray paint, which of course is the exciting part, when it starts getting its character, right? All right, see you then.